Hello, my name's Rob and welcome to Swift Slots. Now, as you know, I've built a few slot car white kits on this channel, and the one thing I've always struggled with, sort of, are the melt posts. I've always glued them in and whatever, but in my last build, the McLaren, I ended up making a little melt tool. Now, I showed you this melt tool before, but I thought I'd go into a little bit more detail with it because Pete from TrackFans TV saw this little tool and he said, I want to buy one. And he assumed that I was selling them at the time, and I wasn't selling them at the time. I just made the little tool, made a little short video about it just to tell the world, because it really is simply just a bar that you heat up. It's nothing really very complicated about it, but Pete wanted to buy one. So I made him one exactly the same as this, as a one-off. And then I thought to myself, other people probably won't want to buy a screwdriver and just chop it off, and maybe they do want to buy a little tool. Maybe they want to support me. Maybe they just want a dedicated tool that's not just a cut-off screwdriver. So I've decided to actually sell these tools. Now, I won't be selling them with these custom-made mahogany handles because I've only got a certain amount of that wood, and to be honest with you, you could buy handles so cheaply there's no point in making one. So I will be selling these on my website, but they will have slightly different handles. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get you on my table and I'm going to show you exactly how to use this tool. I'm actually going to heat it up and I'm going to show you how to melt it, because Pete thought that maybe you heat it up with a soldering iron and you don't. And I just want to clarify how to use this tool properly. So that's one thing I'm going to be doing. Now, the other thing which I'm extremely happy about is this tool here. Now, this tool is not a melt tool. This tool is awesome. Now, if you've been watching this channel for any amount of time, you'll know that I absolutely love Slotting Plus guides. I fit them to everything. Now, the problem with the Slotting Plus guide is that the shaft that comes out the guide is not straight. It's got an ever so slight taper to it, so it's the draw angle, so that when the two halves of the mould come out, it actually comes out the mould properly. Now, to the naked eye, it just looks like a 3.6mm bar. But it's not. It's tapered by a couple of thou over its length, and that does make a difference. If you take a 3.6mm drill and you drill a hole and then you put the Slotting Plus guide in it, it fits, it's okay, but there's a bit of movement. To make that Slotting Plus guide perfect, that hole needs to be tapered by a fraction, and it's quite difficult to do. Now, in previous builds, I've done it. I've used a file and I've faffed around, and you can even drill a 3.6mm hole from the bottom and a 3.5mm hole from the top to give you like a stepped taper, and you can fettle it from there. And it works, but it's a faff. So many times I thought it'd be lovely to have a reamer tool that's exactly the right taper to suit that Slotting Plus guide. And that's exactly what this is. And I made this tool as part of a video that you'll see in a few weeks' time. And I was going to include it as just a throw-in part of the video, but I thought, oh no, because in and of itself, it's a really useful piece of tool. And so I've extracted that video content and I'm going to play it to you now. The first bit will be, I'll show you making this tool, which is what I was going to include in the video, but I'm taking it out and showing you here. And then the next little bit of the video is actually me showing you how to use this tool on the project that I'm working on. And I will be leaving that piece of content in the video, but you'll see it here as well. So there's a little bit of prelude to an upcoming video. But this is a really cool tool and I'm really pleased. I'm really proud of it, to be honest with you. It's highly specialist. It's for fitting only one type of guide, and almost nobody in the world is going to want this tool, but I thought that I would offer it for sale because it is so good at what it does, and I'm really pleased with how it's all turned out. So these aren't going to be cheap. I'm not going to be giving them away because, quite frankly, I have to make each one of these individually, and they're very precise. So my time is worth money, so I think they're worth some money. And again, they won't come with this handle. I just had some mahogany and I chopped it out just to make this one tool. So they'll come with a different handle, but it'll still be a wooden handle. It'll still be a nice thing. So there'll be two tools that I'm going to be offering for sale, both for very different purposes and both really good at what they do. So I'm going to get you on my bench and I'm going to show you this one working, and I'll show you a little video of this one working as well, and then we'll close out. So let's get onto the table. Okay, I'm going to give you a quick demonstration on how I use my melt tool. Now, I like to use this really high quality pencil blowtorch. This has lasted me about 7 years and it's still going strong. I've used cheap ones before and they only last me about 6 months, but this Dremel brand has been really good. I'm also going to use, to demonstrate, this 1.5mm styrene rod. Now, it's not quite a slot car, but it's more or less exactly the same material, and the diameter of the melt post is more or less exactly the same. So this is a really good thing to use to demonstrate. So what I do is I heat this up for about 10 seconds. It doesn't take too long. Now it's quite difficult to overheat this because quite frankly it gets boring to wait for it to actually heat up. So more often than not you'll go to the job with the tip too cold rather than too hot. So you put a little bit of heat in the melt post like this, and once you think you've got enough heat in it, you simply bring it up to the job and you push it into your melt post, and there you go. It melts it instantly, nice and clean, and does a really good job, and it'll do it every single time. And when it cools down, you just heat it up a little bit, and once you've heated it up for the first time, it does retain a decent amount of heat because the bar goes all the way down to the handle back to about there, so that retains quite a bit of heat. So this doesn't go cold too quickly, but you probably will need to top it up for, you know, every sort of 5 or 6 melts. Just top it up with a little bit of heat and go to the job. And like I say, if it's too cold, just take it away, heat it up again and go back to the job, and you can control the heat really well with it. So now the hole is drilled to 3.5mm, I can now use my little special tapered reaming tool to ream out the 3.5mm hole to a tapered 3.6mm to take this Slotting Plus guide. So let's use the tool for the first time. Okay, so I drilled out my hole to 3.5mm. I then honed half of the hole with my honing tool just so that I could get the guide in. Then I could work out then exactly how much material to take away to clear the wires and all the rest of it. Now I've actually got to that stage where I can actually get the guide in the hole and turning, albeit tight, and all that's got cutting out is done, ready to clear for the wires. I can now put my honing tool back in the hole, and I can just very gently, a little bit at a time, just keep going in there and honing out the hole until the guide fits absolutely perfectly in its correct position. So I'm just going to go just a little bit more, a little tiny bit deeper each time, and then try the guide as it's getting better and better each time. So we go in it, just clean, make sure you got to clean up that gullet as well. It's quite important to keep that channel clean. So go in again, just a little tiny bit more. You can just about see the end of the groove in there, and you can see how much is sticking out the other side, so that gives you an idea of roughly where you are in terms of reaming out the hole. I'll try it again, and there, it's getting really close now. And then again once more, we'll probably do it, just go a little bit deeper, just almost up to the end of the hone, and there you go, 100%. Absolutely perfect. There's no movement in that guide whatsoever. There's absolutely no sideways movement, yet it's nice and free to turn. In fact, what I'll do is I'll do the old paintbrush trick. Here we are, I have a paintbrush. So now we can see how easy that is to turn with a paintbrush. Now the paintbrush is free to move. absolutely great. And there's absolutely no movement in that whatsoever. So there we are. So that's the fitment of the guide all complete, and also the first use of my honing tool a complete success. So just for clarity, what I did is I drilled the hole on the slot car to 4.1 mil. Now if you drill a hole in a band in plastic, what you'll find is the band will expand and the hole you drill is a lot smaller than the drill you use. So in plastic you tend to find that anyway, but when we're drilling a loop like you do on a slot car, that's even more exaggerated. So if you drill a 4.1 mil hole, you'll tend to find you'll end up with a very tight 4 mil hole. So what I do is I drill a 4.1 mil hole and then I use some of this Plasticard round rod. Now this is a solid rod in 4 mil. So what I do is I drill my hole at 4.1 mil, check the rod to make sure that it's you want it reasonably loose. You don't want it tight because you want glue in the joint. So you make it relatively loose but not sloppy. So drill your hole 4.1 mil and then you get a piece of your rod, put a bit of super glue on the outside, line the hole on the inside with super glue as well, and then put your rod into the hole. Let it set up with kicker or just over time, and then chop it off nice and flush with the chassis. You want to use super glue because super glue is hard. If you use epoxy, epoxy can be a bit spongy, so when you're reaming you might find the epoxy can move a little bit perhaps, whereas super glue is absolutely, it's rock hard until it's not, and that's what we want for the guide. So you drill your hole 4.1 mil, glue the inside, glue the rod, put the rod in the hole, and then chop the rod off nice and flush with the chassis so you've filled your hole in completely. Then what you want to do is you want to drill out the middle of the plastic card and you want to get out to 3.5 mil. That's the magic number that you want to be at, 3.5. Now remember that plastic expands, so you want to be going in, maybe 3.6 might be the end number. It all depends on the way you're using the drill and so on. So start with a 2 mil, make sure you get it dead center to the rod, and then go out to 2.5, then 3 mil, and then eventually 3.5, or even stop at 3 mil and just get a rat tail file and just file that hole, making sure that you keep it nice and round. Now obviously I have a lathe, so what I do is I just get my 4 mil rod, bung it in the lathe, stick a 3.5 mil drill straight at the middle of it, and I end up with tube. Now you might actually be able to find this as tube itself with a 4 mil outside diameter. I haven't looked, so that might be worth looking at. But if you can't get the tube, then literally just start with 2 mil, work your way up, stop at 3, and then hand file it with a rat tail file to get out to 3.5 mil. Once you're at 3.5 mil, then you can use your tool. So as I showed you in the video, you go in just a couple of turns, and it won't want to go in all that far. So you do a couple of turns, and then you take it out and you clean the gullet out properly. Make sure the gullet is completely clean because it's the gullet that's doing the work. Then you go back in again, and you might only get another couple of mil inside, and you take it out, clean it. Go in and out, in and out, in and out many times, maybe up to 10 times, making sure that you clean out the gullet each time. And small passes is much better than one ramming pass. You don't want that. You want lots of little passes. Remember, this tool will ream out the hole to take the Slotting Plus guide really, really well, and you'll get the whole job done inside about a minute. Whereas if you use the files like I used to use, it can take you half an hour to fettle that joint really well. So it's worth taking your time with this because it isn't much time at all. It just feels like a lot. So go in a bit, take it out, clean it, go in a bit, and after about 30 seconds to a minute, you'll get the whole tool through. Once the whole tool is through, then it really starts to rock. So take it out, clean it, put it back in and wind it in, take it back out. Now bearing in mind that if you use a Slotting Plus guide, or any guide in fact, you may need to pack that guide down. So when the cutting tool is all the way to the bottom, the Slotting Plus guide is a perfect fit all the way flush to the bottom. Now if you're using a packer and you want to bring that guide away from the chassis, then if you go all the way in with the tool, you're going to be going too deep, and the guide is actually going to be sloppy when you put your spacer in. So get the top of the tool about 2 or 3 mil showing, and then test fit your guide with the spacer on it that you think you're going to need. You have to guess it a little bit, and then take the guide out, put the tool back in, and go a little bit deeper, and a little bit deeper, and a little bit deeper, and just balance the reaming with the spacer and the guide on your setup plate, and keep going back and forth and checking all the way until you get it absolutely spot on. And what you'll find is that you'll get the hole absolutely perfect with the spacer on and the guide on and the chassis all sitting down on the plate, and it'll be perfect. That's what you want to be at. Now also bear in mind that when you put the screw in the top of your guide, that screw actually expands the plastic. So although the guide is perfect in the hole, the guide might end up being tight because the screw that you put in the top has swelled it out. Now there's two different ways to tackle that. You can either go in a little bit deeper with your tool, which really means that you're going to be expanding the hole at the bottom, which you don't really want. So what I do is I get a tungsten carbide drill. Now these are very short drills. You can get them from eBay. They're dirt cheap, but they are incredibly fragile, and trust me, they are ridiculously fragile. If you even look at them slightly wrong, they'll snap on you. So be aware of that. But they are incredibly sharp, and that's what you want. You want to cut the plastic, not kind of graunch it out with a dull drill bit, because by doing that, you're not doing anything. All you're doing, you're just swelling the plastic and making a mess. So get yourself, ideally, a tungsten carbide drill at about 2 mil, or a really, really sharp standard high-speed steel 2 mil drill. And what you want to do is you want to drill out the plastic tube on the guide so that when you put the screw in, it doesn't swell the plastic. Now, that screw doesn't do very much at all. It just basically holds the guide in place. It's doing almost no work at all. So it doesn't matter if the screw is a little bit, let's use the word slack. So it doesn't matter too much. And if it's too slack, what you can do is put a little bit of PVA in the hole and then put your screw into that. It's only to stop the guide from falling out the bottom of the car. So you're not really in any risk of anything going wrong by opening that hole up too much. But ideally, what you want to do is you want a 2 mil hole in that plastic. So as I said before, with drilling the actual band of the guide, it will swell. This plastic will also swell. So a 2 mil hole into a plastic tube will actually drill you out something like a 1.95 mil. So that 0.05 is enough just to grip those threads. And that's really all you want. And if you get it wrong, bit of glue, you got it all sorted, not super glue. And so that's my tip for putting the screw in the top. Really sharp drill, ideally a tungsten carbide because it'll do all the cutting and not any swelling. And then put your screw in nice and loose. And again, try the screw, and if it goes a little bit tight on the guide, put your reamer back in the hole and just a couple of turns. And it's very important when you use this reamer, to go round at least one whole turn, because there's a little groove in there that actually does all the cutting. And obviously, if you only give it half a turn, you're only sort of reaming out half of the hole. So you need to give it a couple of turns, but you can press it in as hard as you like or as slack as you like. So you can control the size of the bore that you're making just by how much pressure you put on or how many revolutions you use with the tool. So the ideal is to have the guide in the hole, nice and loose but not sloppy, and the screw in the top nice and slack so it doesn't swell the guide tube itself. And then you end up with a really nice fitting guide. And it's really important to use really sharp drills to make sure that when you're drilling into the guide, you're actually extracting plastic, not just swelling the top of the guide, because that's not going to do you any good at all. So you want a really sharp drill, or better still, one of those tungsten carbide drills that are super sharp. And when you put the tungsten carbide drill into the guide, you'll find that it wants to sort of screw itself down quite quickly, and you've got to try and stop that from happening. So what I do is I turn it a turn or so, and I try and pull it out manually, and then clean off the drill, and then go back in again and then pull it out manually. Don't allow the drill to shoot straight to the bottom of the hole, because it will tend to want to just wind its way straight in. So a little bit of a turn, pull it out, clean out the hole, another bit of a turn, pull it out, clean out the hole, and work your way down to the bottom of the guide. Don't let the drill just go all the way to the bottom, because otherwise you have to pull all that plastic out in one go, and it can make a mess and go a bit wrong quite quickly. So a little bit at a time is always the trick, and don't do it too quickly, and don't use a dull bit. So like I say, really good tool. I've used it 3 times in one day already on one of my projects and 2 customers' cars, and I found it to work really, really well. So there we are. I hope you found that interesting and useful. As I say, the melt tool will be sold for £10 on my website, and the reamer tool will be sold for £25 on my website. So hopefully you'll find that interesting, and if you did, maybe you'll subscribe, and if you could hit the little bell button, that would be awesome. So until the next time, thank you very much.